Hello and welcome to Politically Incorrect. We come to you tonight from the Amity University in Noida. As always, I'm joined by our commentators Manishankar Iyer and Shapun Das Gupta to debate the big issues. Well, this week, the government may have won a political battle with its ally, the Trinamool Congress, on the latest petrol price hike. But is it losing the larger war against inflation itself? Food inflation is at a 9-month high. Petrol prices have gone up a staggering 23% in the last 10 months alone. We're all feeling the pinch of rising food and fuel costs as well as higher interest rates. So just what has happened to the Congress's Aam Aadmi agenda? And with elections due in 5 states at least, is it now becoming a big concern for them? And how long can they afford to ignore these concerns? We're asking tonight, is this government's inability to tackle rising prices its biggest failure? Manishankar Iyer, if I can begin with you. The Prime Minister's recent comments caused a furor. He said rising food inflation was a sign of prosperity. And was this an economist Prime Minister being politically insensitive?
You should get him onto the program in that case. Fact of the matter is that the war against inflation consists of a series of battles that are actually fought every week because there's a weekly price index. It's also fought every month, and it's fought over periods of time. And the performance of inflation seems to show a remarkable variety. Until fairly recently, there was, according to Kaushik Basu, about 12 years of relative price stability. And after that, there have been particular months in which the month-on-month inflation, even measured on an annual basis, has shown a great rise and then suddenly a great fall. So it's not as if there is a continuing trend from which one can draw lessons. There seems to be great volatility in prices, and I'm not trying to detract from the fact that it's very, very worrying. It's extremely worrying. But I thought that this audience needs to, in the first instance, be brought up to date on the facts. The fact of the matter is that prices go up and down, but they seem to be going up and down along a curve that is rising. And this curve is most steeply rising with respect to food items, which is not quite the same thing as the inflation rate in the economy as a whole. And since the poor consume up to 60% of their income in food, and the poorest percentile, according to Kaushik Basu, consumes as much as 67% of its daily expenditure on food items, you can see that, as a well-known economist, Professor Ashok Gulati, has said recently, the food tax, the food inflation is the worst tax that you can impose upon the poorest. So this is a very, very serious problem. And in my personal opinion, it's not really connected with what is happening in the market in terms of larger numbers of consumers or a higher amount of money coming into the market. It's principally caused by the gross neglect of agriculture in order to promote this 8% growth.
Neglect of agriculture the only problem?
No, I think, you started off this session by talking about the famous victory the government won against the Trinamool Congress. Now it seems the government can win these debates, but it is losing the bigger battle, and it's losing it consistently. Around the time of the previous general election in 2009 summer, inflation was almost about 0%, if not 0.1%, something negligible or which didn't even register. From there to come to almost a 10% inflation rate. And each year, Montek or someone, or maybe Kaushik Basu, someone says, by January it will be all right. We've heard this, by January it will be all right, and that it is a cyclical process so many times that I think it's failed to make any impact.
So all talk, no action?
There's no action. The cycle seems to continue. The cycle seems to be never ending. And we're talking, okay, this time the harvest will be better. Nothing happens. It continues. Food inflation, which should come down in the event of a harvest, that doesn't. It's affected. Petrol hike goes on. You spoke about some 23% rise.
In the last 10 months.
In the last 10 months. Interest rates. We had a case of a newspaper which actually said that even after paying EMI for 10 years, you might find yourself in exactly the same position. So high has been the housing loan increases. So what we are seeing consistently is not merely a cyclical process of inflation going along, but a lamentable failure of economic policy. Because the government today has really lost sight of what it's doing. There's been a mismanagement of public finances. There's been a sharp increase of money supply into the market. There's been falling agricultural output. There's been a collapse of the rupee. Only about 6-7 months ago, the rupee was 43 rupees to the dollar. It's nearing 50. And then you wonder why petrol prices have gone up. Then you say, well, you see, we have nothing to do with petrol prices. Who is responsible for this? Someone is responsible.
NDTV's cricket app, Android and iPhone, fastest scorecard, special analysis, and much more. Download free. ndtv.com/apps.